everybody! Sorry again for the wait. Wild year. This is the creation tutorial, or I suppose conversion tutorial for VCCV to DeepVocal. So, just a couple of disclaimers, first of all. Do not record VCCV just for DeepVocal. There are too many parts of the VCCV voice bank that just aren't used or aren't useful. Second of all, only do this if you hate yourself. This took months. This took so long. I cannot emphasize this enough. And there is actually more configuring involved here than there is with VCCV, just because of the nature of DeepVocal and how it handles things. So with that out of the way, we're going to get right into it. So I've got Bunny's VCCV bank here, her first one, just because it's a more standard VCCV bank to work with than the one that I had with Bunny's English native bank for DeepVocal. So first things first, we're going to delete the VCC and CC dash folders because they're completely useless to us. At the time of recording this, DeepVocal does not have any sort of CC compatibility. We can also delete basically every file that you need for utau that you don't need. You can use breaths in DeepVocal, so I'll leave those, but everything else can go. So basically the point of this is we're just going to delete everything from the bank that we don't need to have. This method is only for converting VCCV banks that already exist for use in DeepVocal. Do not record VCCV just for this. It will be a mistake. So with that said, now we're going to open our DeepVocal toolbox. We're going to open the phonetic dictionary function, and you'll notice that it has all of these tabs, and all of these tabs correspond to these files in the toolkit. So what we're gonna do is simply enough open the toolkit, Control-A, Control-C, and just casually paste everything that we need to paste in. And I will point out some of the weirder things as we go. Alright, and so now that we have all of our phonetic dictionary filled out, you'll want to save this file. You'll want to save this file. I usually save things in the same folder as the recording, so I'm going to save this as VCCV to DeepVocal demo. And that'll save basically everything we've entered in here is now saved, so you don't have to worry about it again. Some things I would like to point out. You may have noticed that I do have vowels like am, or, own, all, etc. These are for, basically to create working CVC notes. As you may remember from recording VCCV, if you go into this CVC-CV folder, you can actually record these as VCs. The important thing to note here is that you do have to have the regular CV and the CCV. Nothing else is going to work. Don't even try. So from here, we are now going to go into build voice configuration. And this part of the tutorial, I'm going to basically just vaguely go over how to configure a DeepVocal bank, in addition to how to configure all of the weird shit that I did to make English work in this program. So, you'll also notice if I go over here that L, N, M, and NG are vowels. This is crucial, because this is the only way to make CCs, ending CCs with these notes. Because if we register them as a vowel, then DeepVocal will be like, yeah, that's totally a vowel, it's voiced enough. And you can actually combine it with a consonant in a way that I will show soon. You'll also notice these vowels here, XL, XY, XR, XW. We'll get to those in a second. So to configure this for DeepVocal, we're going to go wave location and we're going to find the part in the computer where the voice bank is at. And there it is. So I usually do these folders in order, and I'm going to do these folders in this order. And basically just go over the types of aliases and whatever else that you're going to be working with within this system. So we're going to open our recording folder. Now, unlike set param or utau, it's not going to open a list of recordings in that folder. You have to enter in the WAV file name here manually. Don't do that. Go to where you have CZ's VCCV reclist unpacked. So what we're going to do instead of typing in every single goddamn WAV file name manually is we're going to open our core reclist for VCCV. And you can do this with any type of DeepVocal bank. Just open your reclist, select basically just go down the line, select the whole file name, Control V, and remember to type .wav at the end. And then when you move on to another one, you just select the next one, put it in here, etc. Make sure you also enter in the pitch of the voice bank in this little box here. So basically the way this works is I've registered XL, XY, XR, and XW as vowels. And this is how we're going to fake CCVs. So if you remember correctly, in VCCV, normally these notes would be odoed into _CV notes that would be used to fake CCVs. We can't do that with DeepVocal because we only have two options, CV and VX. So what we do is we make this transitional sound here a vowel. In this case, XR. And we're going to transition from XR to and click New Markers, and it'll pull up this window with the recording in it. I usually like to make it a lot bigger, because I'm used to odoing in separam. And then, for these notes in particular, so for these fake _CV notes, you want to make sure that the first parameter line is about in the middle of the consonant. You don't want it too close to the air because it'll be too full of breath and DeepVocal won't like that. And you don't want it to be too close to the transition because we want the transition to be encompassed inside it. And then we're going to put the second parameter once the vowel becomes clear. And then make sure you hit this little check mark and it'll save it automatically. It does actually save the file automatically to that particular voice folder. And that's basically the only type of alias we have in this folder is the fake _CV aliases. All right, next folder is CCV, which we will, so pull up your next folder, pull up the next reclist. Make sure that the reclist and the folder match because as you can see, they are not in the same order. So this is where we are going to get the CVs that will make the other half of the CCV transition. So in this case, it's going to be BL. And DeepVocal allows for both -CVs and regular CVs, and they are a little different, but they're not that different. And you only really need the regular CVs for it to work. So if you want to save yourself some configuring, you can just skip the -CVs altogether. I left them in because they're there, and why wouldn't I use them? But anyways, so this is going to be -BL, and if we look into our symbol list, you'll notice that BL, the starting sound is B, and the ending sound is XL, because that is the vowel that we have designated for this transitional LCCV sound. So we're gonna hit New Markers again, and it'll pull up our reclist. And for these, so for the -CVs, it doesn't really matter where you put this crossfade point, because nothing's gonna, DeepVocal will only play this note if it's at the beginning, so who cares? You want the pre-utterance to be right where the second consonant starts and right after the first consonant ends. You want to put the vowel start point, basically just odo it like it's a vowel. So the vowel start point goes there, and the vowel end point goes there. And DeepVocal will treat that as though it is a vowel segment, assuming you don't have any goddamn model errors. So remember to hit the check mark. And then the next thing that we have in this is the regular CVs, of course. You do absolutely need the regular CVs or it won't work. The dash CVs are optional, the regular CVs are not. So we're going to click new markers again. And for these, we kind of want to get the crossfade point as close to the consonant as we can get it without actually including any of the consonant in it. You'll notice that this is a B. I will show you how to do the other type of consonants in a short while, because the main thing here is there's a space between the end of this previous vowel and the next one, and we want to preserve as much of this space as possible. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I go over the regular CVs and VCs in just a second. So then we're going to go start point, end point, and remember to hit the check mark. The next folder is our CV folder. We're going to do the same thing where we're going to open the CV reclist. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our, blah, 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 we're going to do the thing. So this folder has dash CVs, regular CVs, and it also has VCs, which I will talk about now. So you're going to want to do dash ha first, new markers. I always do CVs, all the CVs, and then all the VCs, just because it's more organized and there's less clicking back and forth. So the same kind of deal. We're going to make sure that the control point is kind of at the beginning in this space between the breath and the... So there we go. And you want the pre-utterance at the beginning of the vowel. Basically, this is sort of like it is in utau. This is the pre-utterance. This is sort of like the overlap, but not really. And then this one kind of functions like the consonant parameter in utau, and this one functions like the right blank. So again, you just want to make sure that everything between 3 and 4 is this nice, consistent, even vowel. And that's really all you need to do. Just put the number 2, the pre-utterance point, at the beginning. And then we're going to do our regular CV. You'll also notice that if you scroll over first and then click new markers, you don't have to rearrange all of them. So, for a soft consonant like this, we need to put the crossfade point in the exact center, or as close to the center as you can possibly get it. And I really cannot emphasize this enough. You gotta put it as close to the center as you can get. And then... Again, pre-utterance right before the vowel. Vowel start point goes there. Vowel end point's mostly in the same place. Check mark. So you may notice that you have to write out every single alias by hand. There is no option to this. That's just how DeepVocal works. I'm in hell. Okay, so for the VC then, we're just gonna tab our AH new markers. We're gonna stick, again, we want to put the end point of the crossfade directly in the center. And we'll talk about hard consonants more when we get into the next folder, because the next folder actually has them. And then we're gonna go to... You want the start point of these VCs to be basically at the end of where the vowel starts looking inconsistent. So like the vowel stops being consistent at about here, and then it crossfades into the consonant. This is true for every kind of VC. This point does not change. And that's it for this folder. So the next folder is the Big Daddy, CVC. This is the one that contains the majority of the aliases, and it's also the one that contains the majority of the recordings and whatever else I was about to say. So we're gonna put in our Bob Cobb recording here. So in this folder we're gonna have CV- regular CV, the VC transition, the ending VC, and another special alias that makes this whole thing work. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to do our, dash CV. It's kind of the same. You just put your thing there, and then you put your other thing there. And then, so these CVs work differently than the other CVs in that there's a space between, there's a definitive space between the vowel and the consonant. And you want that space to be preserved as much as possible through the crossfade. So when we make our ba CV, obviously the pre-utterance goes where it always goes. And then you want to put this crossfade point about as close to the consonant as you can get it without actually getting the consonant in there. And then again with 3 and 4, you just want to make sure that this section in between is nice and consistent. And then likewise with the VC, we want to... By the way, you can hold control when you click to drag all the points at once. Basically, the idea behind the VC is that you need the end point of the crossfade and the start point of the crossfade in the CV to be in about the same place. So with this one, we want to include most of the gap without actually including any of the consonant. And then the start point goes at like the end of that nice consistent vowel portion. So for VC endings, we're going to add a dash to the end of the consonant, and we're going to click New Markers. You want the start point to be at the end of where the vowel is nice and consistent, and you want this end point to be somewhere after the consonant has finished its entire deal. You want to include the entirety of the consonant in here. The consonant, the aspiration, the whole thing. And hit check mark. You'll notice that these VX notes are very easy to configure because there's only 2 parameters. It's kind of nice. And now we get to the special alias. So if you noticed while you were pasting in symbols to your phonetic dictionary, the unvoiced consonant list and the independent symbol list are almost identical. They all contain the same symbols, which seems like it would contradict with itself. But if we click check dictionary, everything's fine. So this is the feature of DeepVocal that attempts to compensate for the fact that it cannot do CCs. You can configure an unvoiced consonant as an isolated sound, and that isolated sound will crossfade. Basically, if I put this note, so we're going to make a note called B, just B, and if I put this note in DeepVocal, it will play the VC before it plays the B. But then you can put another note that's just D after it, and it'll kind of sound like abd, but it might sound weird because they're not timed properly because we can't actually use actual CC notes. But it's the best you're gonna get, so it is what it is. So for these, you kind of want, for the spaced consonants anyways, you kind of want this to be sort of in the middle of the gap between the vowel and the consonant, and you want this after the consonant and the aspiration and everything is done. So to configure this with a softer consonant like S, what we're going to do is we're going to, again, the endpoint goes after the consonant is done doing its thing. The start point, you want to go in a little bit inward. Not directly in the center, but like about that far in, yeah? And that's it for this folder. We're moving on through. Okay, here's where it gets complicated because we are into CVC-CV. And this folder's kind of a nightmare, and I'll show you why here in a second. Because if you choose to keep the CVC notes that I included, and you do have the option to cut these out, and I would not blame you one bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to do this. We're going to configure our CV with just BA. You'll notice how the vowel kind of changes in the middle, and that's what differentiates the ampersand note from the @ symbol note. But anyways, so we just made this CV, and now we're actually going to copy it and add the M at the end. Because, obviously, this sound doesn't always end in M. Sometimes it ends in N. And so because of that, we can't actually leave it that way. And you'll also notice that if we click over into our symbol list that these are different symbols, and it is for that reason, because otherwise you'll have M's playing before N's and it'll just get nasty. And then we're going to do the same thing with the regular CV. So then we're going to configure a VC that is MB. Same way as we do beforehand. So this is a good way to demonstrate, because this is kind of a diphthong. It's not entirely a diphthong, but it kind of is. So with a diphthong, you can see how the vowel changes. You want it to be before the vowel changes. Same does with the that fourth parameter in the CV. You want it before the vowel changes so that the whole vowel change is within the transition. So the other thing that you're going to get from this folder, and the other reason that these recordings exist, is so that you can get the transition between these two consonants. And since we can't call it the same thing as the voiced consonant, we've made it into a vowel. Now, I've styled these in CZ's fashion of doubling it. So you'll see how we have double L, double N, double M. This may not be efficient for you, and you may choose to change this later. It's up to you. Just be aware that you cannot name it the same thing that you named the consonant, but you can add like an apostrophe after it, and that'll work fine, or you can make it capital, or you can make it, you know, whatever, figure it out. So, this is, as you may have guessed, this is a VC between M and B. We're gonna... Why? Oh, remember to type .wave at the end of your... because otherwise that happens. And then, again, it works exactly like a VC does, where you just put the start point where it starts to fade out, and the end point at the appropriate location based on the consonant. And that's it. And that's this folder. That's all you'll be facing there. Next up is the vowel folder, the isolated vowel folder. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, again, same thing, change the folder, pull up the reclist, open the thing. So here is where we're going to get our dash V's, regular V's. You do need regular V's or else it will not work at all. That confused me when I first started trying to configure a DeepVocal voice bank. I didn't understand why the vowels weren't playing, and it's because I hadn't configured isolated vowel symbols like what we have in the symbol list. And we're also going to get our natural vowel endings, our V dashes. By the way, you'll notice the dash is not in the symbol list. It doesn't have to be. It's automatic. So we're going to do our vowels here. These are CVs, by the way. So for a dash vowel, you want, again, crossfade point doesn't really matter, just out here somewhere. You want the pre-utterance point right at the start. If you're like me and you tend to have a little bit of a glottal stop at the front of your vowels, maybe just like cut a little bit of that off. And then same thing with points 3 and 4. And then for the regular V, just the vowel, you actually want the crossfade point directly at the beginning of the vowel and no later. You'll put the pre-utterance point a little bit afterwards and do the same thing with vowel start point and end point. And basically, DeepVocal uses this note to transition to a VV. And then we're going to get our V dashes. Same deal as the VCs, except there's no consonant there, so you just kind of want to get it after this little breathy part. Also, strong note, if you didn't record these, like you didn't record samples like ing, or, and therefore you don't have the ngor sound, you'll want to actually configure it here and then flip over into your voice consonant list and change it to an unvoiced consonant, because otherwise DeepVocal will have a royal fit. Obviously, if you did record those sounds, you would configure it from the folder in which those sounds are kept. But for now, we're going to get them from here, because this is actually the purpose of the ka here, is to create a sort of fake crossfade. So you want the pre-utterance to be like right where the vowel becomes clear, the crossfade point to be sort of at the beginning, and then just your normal. All right, next folder, VC. So this is going to have more of those VC dash notes, but they're specifically going to be for... I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. This is a big tutorial. So yeah, this is the VCs specifically for things like M, N, R, L, NG. You're also going to want to use these for NG transitional lines, again, if you didn't actually configure those. The way that VCs work in VCCV doesn't carry over. You just have the one kind of ending VC. So in this case, this is M, and it's the same sort of deal. We just put our markers where they go, where I said that they went earlier in the video. Click our little check mark and we're on our merry way. Likewise, if you are doing the NG thing, which you will be doing if you recorded with the standard reclist and didn't add an add-on list like I did with Bunny's newest VCCV bank, you're going to want to do this too, where you make the VC regular. And again, you're just going to put this, like, as far into the... You kind of don't want it to be in the center this time, just because the timing will be weird when you put the other note next to it. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to talk about for that folder. And now the VVs. So, funny story about VVs in DeepVocal. If they start with a vowel, they don't really work. I don't know why. Something about DeepVocal's crossfade just hates diphthongs, specifically in VVs for some reason. If you're using the standard reclist, the only VVs that you have are the ones that start with diphthongs, so that'll be fun. And if you added in all of the VVs, why? Why do you hate yourself like this? I'm serious, there are like 400 configuration lines that you have to get from here to make it work, and it's a pain in the ass. And also, don't forget that with vowels like this, you have to make the VV and then copy it to the M VV, and it's a pain in the ass. But anyways, so to show you how this works, or at least the way that I got it to work the best, and before you say anything, yes, DeepVocal differentiates between cases. It'll be fine. I've done this before. So to do here, we're going to put our start point before the vowel changes. So like, there. And then we want to put this like there. You might have seen in the usage tutorial how you can kind of drag the phoneme parameter to make it not sound as bad. And this is sort of how that works, but it's dicey. But the main long and short of it is, for a VV, you want the end point where the next vowel becomes clear, and you want the start point where the first vowel stops being clear. In this case, since it's a diphthong, you want it before the mid-change in the vowel. And that's it, unless you recorded with like an extras list for breaths or whatever else. I am going to show you how to configure just an isolated breath real quick in case you don't know. So let's just call this breath 1. So to do that, we're going to find the location with our breath waves in it. In this case, it's the main bank folder because I'm basic. And then again, it's an independent symbol, so you click down here into independent, type in exactly the way it is in your phonetic dictionary. New markers. Don't tell me I got the file name. Okay, good. And again, you just want the start point before the breath, end point after the breath is finished, and yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it. So, with that said, we're done configuring. Except we're not, because you actually have to do the whole thing. Then, we're done with this. We're done with this. We're going to go into Build Voice Bank. We're going to add all of those folders as locations. If I can remember where I put them. So we're going to add the main folder. Yes, you do have to do this for every folder. Yes, it does take this long. And then obviously we want the model symbols to be... So basically the first step to this is tell it where the recordings are. And then we have to generate the model files. The model files sort of work like FRQs in utau, except there's one model file for every configuration line in the bank. And they're big. They're like the size of a more sampler LLSM, if you're familiar. So basically, these banks are huge. They're gonna take up a lot of space on your computer, and you better be ready for that. You also want to specify a specific location for your model. I usually make a new folder inside the bank folder that I call models, and put the models in the models folder. And then you click build voice model files. It'll ask you where to save the log file. I usually save it to the bank folder, and then we just hit model log. And you'll see it'll run through everything we configured and generate a model for it. And if as long as it doesn't say error, you're fine. If it does say error, fuck with the configuration until it stops saying that. I really don't have any other advice. Also, this takes 500 years every time, and it's a pain in the ass. You can kind of make this go faster by rendering the models for one folder at a time. And you would do that by not adding all of the wave locations into that segment yet. And so once it says end here, we can close this window. And then you want to go into your model log that it just... Why did I click there? You want to go into your model log that it just made. And usually the way I do this is by hitting Control F. Don't match case, don't wrap around. Typing in error. And if it can't find it, you're good. If it does find it, you can comb through it this way easily in order to find the specific lines that are causing model errors. And you will want to iron those out before you finish the bank, or else that sound's just not going to play. Because DeepVocal's not like utau. It won't just render whatever you give it. It has standards. It's picky. Sometimes it just hates your voice. Like, if you're too breathy and you're whispery, it'll just be like, fuck you, I'm not gonna make this voice bank, and that's rude. But anyways, now that we have our models, we're going to type in what pitches you have in your bank. So in this case, all we have is A4. If you have multiple, you would separate them like it says to here. Singer name, VCCV demo, since this isn't a full bank. Bank location. This is where it's going to save the actual files that are the voice bank. And again, I usually make another folder inside the bank folder specifically for this. And then you click build voice bank. It'll ask you to save another log file. Don't overwrite your model log file. I usually call this bank log and save it in the same place. And like right now, it's going to give me all sorts of errors because it's like, you didn't configure literally anything in the bank. And you know what? You're right. And so now that we've rendered our bank files, assuming there's no errors or mistakes anywhere, congrats, you're done. You have a DeepVocal, you have a fully functioning VCCV DeepVocal bank, and odds are it's so massive that you could hit somebody with it and actually do physical damage. Thank you for watching. Again, sorry for the wait. Shit happens. But this is it. This is all you need to know. So, thanks for watching.